In the still, sterile quiet of a therapist's office, healing is supposed to begin. But sometimes, behind the certificates on the wall and the soft tone of voice, something sinister waits to take root. This is not just a story about a murder. It's about how someone can be broken not by violence, but by trust. He was told therapy would save him. Instead, it led him to murder. The most disturbing part? He still thinks he was doing the right thing. September 4, 2018. The first day Daniel Grayson walked into Dr. Evelyn Moore's office, he looked like every other patient she'd seen, tired, worn, and quietly desperate. But to Evelyn, Daniel wasn't just another broken man. He was exactly the kind of patient she liked most, vulnerable, isolated, and eager to be led. Daniel was 29, recently divorced, no kids, worked a mid-level IT job. He'd moved back to his hometown of Ashbridge, Massachusetts, after a mental breakdown and a failed suicide attempt the previous spring. He lived alone in a second-floor apartment above a closed-down pharmacy. No social life. No support system. Perfect. Dr. Evelyn Moore had degrees from Yale, years of accolades, and a reputation as the therapist who could pull people back from the edge. People in Ashbridge trusted her implicitly. The mayor's daughter had seen her. The police chief's wife too. And when someone suggested she take Daniel on as a client, Evelyn welcomed him without hesitation. But not because she wanted to help. From the very beginning, her sessions with Daniel were different. She didn't follow typical CBT techniques. She rarely assigned homework or used diagnostic tools. Instead, she focused on what she called unblocking inner pathways. In practice, that meant long, hypnotic conversations about trauma, identity, and loyalty. She gave Daniel books to read, unusual ones like The Myth of Individualism and Freedom Through Submission. She spoke often of moral decay in society, of righteous acts done for a greater cause. To Daniel, it all sounded enlightening. He was grateful someone finally understood him. People like us, she told him one evening as the sun dipped behind the blinds, aren't meant for the world as it is. We see it more clearly. The sickness, the lies. That's why it hurts. Those words stuck. More than any therapy ever had. Within 2 months, Daniel was attending 3 sessions a week. They often lasted late into the evening. Evelyn had him bring journals filled with thoughts, dreams, and memories. She began encouraging him to sever ties, with his ex-wife, with his parents, even with his longtime friend, Matt, who had always stood by him. They don't get it, she'd whisper. They're part of the machine that broke you. By December, Daniel didn't talk to anyone except her. She had become his only voice of reason. His only anchor. What no one knew was that Evelyn had done this before. 10 years earlier, while practicing in New Jersey under a different name, she'd been quietly investigated for ethical violations involving a teenage patient who became obsessive and attempted suicide. The inquiry was buried. Record sealed. She changed states, changed her hair, and built a new life. Ashbridge never knew. Now, she saw in Daniel what she always looked for: malleability. One session in late January took a darker turn. Daniel, teary-eyed, confessed he sometimes felt like he wanted to hurt people. Not specific people. Just people. Strangers. The ones who laughed in coffee shops. Who walked past him like he was invisible. Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward and said softly, "You're not wrong to feel that way. Pain, when ignored, becomes anger. But what if that anger could be used for something more?" It was the first seed. Over the next few weeks, she began introducing new themes: cleansing pain, righteous violence, and sacrificial acts. She cited historic revolutionaries and lone wolves. She told stories of misunderstood heroes who did terrible things for a better world. To Daniel, who had lost his sense of identity, it all sounded noble. He believed her. He trusted her. He loved her. Not romantically, though maybe that too in some twisted corner of his mind. But more than that, he was loyal. Fiercely. One cold night in February, he asked her, "Would you still see me if I did something bad?" She paused, then smiled faintly. "If it's done for the right reason, Daniel, I would never turn away from you." It felt like permission. By March, Evelyn began naming people. Not outright. Not orders. But suggestions. "She's the one who mocked you at that party in high school, right? Interesting how she's now working at that non-profit for women's empowerment. How funny." Or, "Do you remember the judge who ruled against you in the custody case? Some of them never think they'll answer for what they've done. They weren't accusations. They were provocations." And Daniel? He began planning. He wasn't insane. He knew the law. He wasn't violent by nature. But under Evelyn's influence, those old rules no longer applied. She had slowly dismantled his moral compass and replaced it with her own. And he didn't even realize it was happening. Because Dr. Evelyn Moore wasn't pulling strings with force. She was doing it with silence, validation, and just enough suggestion to let the chaos look like his idea. Daniel's journals had always been messy, but now they were dangerous. One name kept showing up, over and over, underlined, circled, next to words like justice, betrayal, and finally, end her. Daniel Grayson had always journaled as part of therapy. It started innocently, pages filled with rants about his ex-wife, his failures, his confusion. But by mid-February something had shifted. The entries turned darker, more deliberate. Names were no longer blurred into metaphors or vague references. Now there was one name front and center. Lindsay Porter. The woman who broke his heart in college. The woman Evelyn subtly reminded him had humiliated him at that infamous graduation party. The one who had posted photos of Daniel, drunk, crying, on social media. It had gone viral in their circle. He'd never recovered. Until recently she was just a memory. But Evelyn had resurrected her like a ghost, and Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her now. "Why do you think she hurt you so badly?" Evelyn asked one evening, tilting her head. Daniel clenched his fists. "She made me feel worthless. She laughed when I told her I wanted to marry her." Evelyn's voice softened. "And no one ever held her accountable, did they?" He shook his head. "Never. You're not alone anymore, Daniel. You don't have to carry that shame by yourself." That night, Daniel wrote. "It always comes back to her. Evelyn says it's unresolved trauma. But maybe trauma doesn't resolve. Maybe it just needs retribution." March 1st. The entries became more erratic. He was writing at 3 a.m. Scribbled diagrams. Rough sketches. A list of Lindsay's routines pulled from her public Facebook. Where she worked, what time she went to yoga, which cafe she visited every Sunday. It wasn't stalking, he told himself. It was closure. Evelyn never explicitly told him what to do. But she never told him not to either. During a Thursday session, Daniel finally asked, "Do you think people like Lindsay deserve to just walk around free?" Evelyn's answer was calm, surgical. "The world rarely punishes the right people, Daniel. But every now and then, someone brave enough comes along to balance the scale." The shift was complete. He began rehearsing what he'd say to her. He imagined confrontations where he forced her to admit what she did. He played scenes in his mind where she begged for forgiveness. Then, gradually, those fantasies morphed into something more violent, something final. One entry read, "She should feel what I felt. Maybe then the pain would go away." Evelyn says wounds can fester if they're not released. What Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Evelyn had seen this pattern before. In another patient. Back in New Jersey, the teenage boy she'd once treated had also begun targeting an ex. A girl who allegedly mocked him in middle school. That patient had nearly burned down her house. He survived a suicide attempt after being arrested. The investigation? Silenced. Evelyn had connections then, still does. But the pattern was crystal clear. Find the wound. Pick at it. Then guide the rage. And now Daniel was nearing the edge. March 10th. He started following Lindsay. Once. Then twice. Then every day for a week. He watched her from his car outside the cafe. She looked happy. Put together. Completely unaware that someone, just feet away, was planning her undoing. One night, Evelyn said something that changed everything. Sometimes the only way to reclaim your story is to end the chapter someone else wrote for you. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He just stared at the ceiling, thinking, replaying everything. Then came the day he brought the knife. A cheap hunting blade from a pawn shop, kept hidden under the driver's seat of his car. His palms sweated the entire time. He didn't plan to use it, not at first. It was just a symbol, a way to feel powerful. Until she walked by him on the sidewalk, and smiled. Not at him, at someone behind him. But the smile struck like lightning. The same smile she gave the boy at the party. The same one she wore while ruining him. His grip tightened on the handle beneath his seat. For a moment, just a second, he felt the world tilt. But he didn't act. Not yet. That night, he confessed it all to Evelyn. "I followed her. I almost did it." She didn't react with shock. Didn't report him. Instead, she whispered, "The fact that you didn't proves you're stronger than your pain. But remember, some people never learn unless they're shown the consequences." Daniel left with a clearer mind. Not because he was cured. Because he had direction. He no longer doubted his purpose. The strings had tightened, too snug to break. She thought it was a reconnection. He knew it was a setup. But what neither of them realized was that the real mastermind never even left the stage. Daniel Grayson stared at the screen for what felt like hours before hitting send. "Hey, is this Lindsay Porter? I think we went to college together." But it wasn't him messaging her. Not really. The profile photo showed a man named Michael, tan, athletic, and entirely fictional. He had created the account under Evelyn's guidance, or what he convinced himself were her suggestions. "You said closure is facing the past," he had told her. Evelyn nodded softly. Closure is control. And Daniel was desperate for both. Lindsay responded within hours. Friendly, cautious, but open. They messaged back and forth for days. Daniel kept his tone neutral, casual, but under the surface he was seething. Every remember when was a mockery. She didn't even remember him. That was the worst part. He wasn't a scar on her life. He wasn't even a footnote. But she was the whole damn story in his. Evelyn's instructions became more pointed. Though she never said the word revenge, she implied it with chilling elegance. Some people deserve to know what they've done to others. To look into the eyes of their consequences. Daniel began feeding Lindsay lies about a fake college reunion. Said he was helping organize it. Said it would be a small meetup in town. Said he'd love to see her again. She agreed. He met Evelyn the night before the meetup. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. "I don't know if I can go through with it." She walked to him slowly, like a stage director correcting a trembling actor. "This isn't about hurting anyone, Daniel," she said soothingly. "This is about healing. You're claiming power back from someone who made you powerless. That's not cruelty, it's therapy." He looked into her eyes. Warm, calm, commanding. And he believed her. The next day Lindsay arrived at the cafe. Daniel watched from across the street, hidden under a hoodie and sunglasses. She sat by the window, ordered a chai latte. Checked her phone. He waited. But instead of walking in, Daniel did something unexpected. He froze. He couldn't move. All the rage, the humiliation, the years of therapy, they hit him at once like a freight train. But so did doubt. What if she apologized? What if she cried? What if she remembered? Back in Evelyn's office, he collapsed onto the couch. "I couldn't do it." She didn't scold him. She smiled. "You did more than enough. You saw her. You faced the fear. But now you need something she can't brush off. Something permanent." The next week, Daniel's behavior spiraled. He stopped sleeping. Became erratic. He told coworkers he was figuring things out, and withdrew from friends. He started writing letters. Long, agonizing manifestos about how the world had failed him, about how Lindsay was the symbol of everyone who mocked and discarded him. About how Evelyn had finally shown him the truth. One letter ended with a chilling line. "If I disappear, it was because I finally woke up and decided to do something about it." Evelyn never reported the letter. She never warned anyone. She burned it. April 12th. Daniel sent Lindsay one last message from the fake profile. "Meet me at 6 p.m. behind the student theater. It'll be just us. One last memory." She agreed. He packed the same hunting knife from weeks ago. But this time it wasn't symbolic. As Daniel approached the meeting spot, dark, overgrown, and quiet, his heartbeat roared in his ears. Lindsay stood in the fading light, checking her phone. He stepped closer. Then for the first time she looked straight at him. Her expression twisted in confusion. "Wait, Daniel?" He froze. She remembered. The knife trembled in his hand. But no words came. She stepped back, fear replacing recognition. "Are you following me?" The tension shattered when a passing car's headlights hit them both. The moment was lost. She screamed. He ran. He didn't stab her. But he did something else. He ran straight to Evelyn. Told her it failed. Told her he failed. She didn't comfort him. She didn't scold him. She stared at him coldly, and said, "Then maybe you're not ready to reclaim your life after all." It was the moment Daniel truly broke. The therapist who made him feel chosen, seen, empowered, had turned on him. He wasn't special anymore. And that was more unbearable than the pain Lindsay ever caused him. 1 week later, Lindsay reported the incident to police. An investigation began. The fake account was traced. And so was the IP address. What they found opened a new chapter no one was ready for. The police thought they were investigating a disturbed man. Instead, they uncovered a string of patients, each shattered, each shaped by one woman's influence. And not all of them were still alive. The moment detectives linked the fake social media account to Daniel Grayson's IP address, the case seemed open and shut. An unstable man, a near assault, and a clear motive rooted in past romantic obsession. But as they pulled on the thread, something strange unraveled. Daniel hadn't just acted out of rage. He had been pushed. Not by a friend or a cult leader or an online community. By his therapist. Detective Karen Holt was the first to question the therapy angle. While reviewing Daniel's browser history and notes, she noticed the name Dr. Evelyn Moore recurring constantly, highlighted in journals, signed on digital PDF evaluations, and even referenced in emails. Most patients mention their therapist in passing. Daniel wrote about Evelyn like a prophet. At first, Dr. Moore appeared spotless. Harvard-trained. 10 years of private practice. Multiple awards. Psychology Today columnist. Her clients included professors, local business owners, and a few high-ranking town officials. But the deeper Holt looked, the more cracks she found. First, the anomalies in paperwork. Several of Evelyn's patient files lacked formal diagnoses or DSM-5 coding. Her progress notes were vague, poetic, and sometimes completely absent. And then there were the closed cases, ones that ended abruptly. Too abruptly. One patient moved across the country. Another withdrew from family and work overnight. A third, Megan Ellis, had committed suicide 2 years ago. Holt flagged the name. She made the call. Megan's parents were still grieving. When asked about therapy, her father's voice cracked. She started seeing Dr. Moore 6 months before everything. At first she was better, smiling again. But then she cut us off, said we were toxic, and Evelyn helped her see that. He paused. She stopped taking her meds. Evelyn told her she didn't need them. That she just needed to purge the noise. Megan jumped off a bridge 3 months later. Detectives tracked down other ex-patients. 2 refused to talk. One, a man named Caleb, spoke, but only off record. I thought I was crazy, he whispered. But she made me feel like being broken was power. Like, the more pain I had, the more potential I had. I started resenting everyone around me. She fed that. When asked why he stopped seeing Evelyn, Caleb's hands trembled. She told me to confront my ex, said I should look her in the eyes and make her feel what I felt. I almost did something I'd regret forever. Back in her office, Evelyn remained composed when interviewed. Yes, Daniel was my patient. Yes, he struggled with intense trauma. But I never condoned any violence. She smiled gently. I believe in emotional confrontation, not physical. When Holt brought up Megan Ellis, Evelyn's expression darkened, but not with guilt. Megan was already on a path. I tried to help. Some people can't be saved. But her tone lacked sadness. It was cold, clinical. The police obtained a warrant for Evelyn's practice records. What they found confirmed their worst fears. Audio recordings of sessions where she encouraged patients to disrupt the lives of those who hurt them. A locked drawer filled with letters from patients thanking her for awakening them. One chilling note from a former patient simply read, "You said I'd be free once it was done. But I'm not. I'm just numb." Even Evelyn's former assistant, Carla, came forward anonymously. She would select patients who were isolated, damaged, and emotionally vulnerable. She didn't help them heal. She made them dependent. And then, she turned them. When asked why she didn't report sooner, Carla's voice shook. Because I saw what happened to those who walked away. And I didn't want to be next. Meanwhile, Daniel remained in custody, mentally deteriorating. In interviews he kept repeating one phrase. She said it would make me whole. She said it would set me free. When asked who she was, he stared blankly, then whispered, "My only friend." Psychological evaluators deemed Daniel unstable, but manipulable. His actions were criminal, but his mindset? Deeply programmed. Almost cult-like. The district attorney now faced a complex legal web. Could they charge Evelyn Moore? There was no physical proof she told Daniel to attack Lindsay. No direct command. Just influence. Calculated, powerful, and consistent influence. Was that enough? Or was she simply a master of walking the line? The town watched in horror as headlines exploded. Respected therapist accused of psychological manipulation leading to attempted murder. Healer or handler? The Evelyn Moore investigation deepens. Public opinion divided. Some called it a witch hunt. Others a reckoning. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. As more victims stepped forward and Daniel's confession tapes leaked to the press, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about a man pushed too far. It was about how he was pushed, and by whom. One patient disappeared. Another tried to kill. And now, a third resurfaces, with a secret file Evelyn thought she destroyed. This time, her own words may be the noose around her neck. While public opinion flared around Evelyn Moore, the legal system stumbled. Yes, she had manipulated Daniel Grayson. Yes, a pattern of coercion stretched across a decade of patience. But without a direct link between her words and his attempted murder, it all danced just outside the reach of criminal law. What Evelyn had done was morally repugnant. But was it illegal? That question began to crumble one cold morning in late October, when a man named Oliver Trent walked into the local precinct with a bag in hand and the weight of 7 years of silence on his back. Detective Karen Holt remembered him instantly. His name had surfaced weeks ago on a list of past patients. A redacted file with no forwarding address. No medical transfer. Just a scribbled note in Evelyn's records, terminated, too reactive. Now here he was, thin, pale, and with eyes that hadn't slept in days. "I thought I was the only one," Oliver said, his voice rough. "But I saw the story. The headlines. Daniel. Megan. I know what she did. Because she almost did it to me." Holt asked him to explain. Instead, Oliver opened the bag and placed 3 items on the table. A cassette tape recorder. A stack of therapy session tapes, each labeled with a date. A notebook filled with entries, some scribbled in all caps, others barely legible. He leaned forward and whispered, "She told me to destroy these. I never did." The tapes were a revelation. In one, Evelyn's voice lilted softly, rhythmic and firm. "They hurt you, Oliver. So why should they get to walk free? Why should they sleep soundly while you suffer? You're not a victim, you're the reckoning." In another, she cooed, "Anger isn't the enemy. Anger is fuel. You just have to direct it, carefully." And finally, in a chilling crescendo, "Your mother deserves to understand what she did. Make her listen, even if it's the last thing she hears." Oliver never followed through. But he almost did. "She knew about my mother," he told Holt. "She knew I tried to get away from that past. She made me dig it up, scratch at it, then weaponize it. I used to walk past her house at night with a bat in my coat. I was ready." He looked away. "I don't know what stopped me. Maybe I realized she wasn't fixing me, she was feeding something inside me." Evelyn had insisted her patients record sessions for clarity. What she hadn't expected was for one of them to keep the originals. What Oliver delivered wasn't just emotional evidence. It was intent. It was strategy. It was premeditated manipulation. The prosecution now had more than a trail of broken people. They had her blueprint. In court, Evelyn's legal team painted Oliver as delusional and obsessed. They claimed the tapes were fabricated, the diary a fantasy. But forensic analysis confirmed. The tapes were authentic. The voice was hers. And her defense began to falter. Meanwhile, Daniel's condition had stabilized just enough for him to testify. But what he said shocked even the courtroom. "I don't hate her," he said softly. "I loved her. She made me feel like I mattered. Like my pain was useful. She said I was born for something bigger than suffering. And I believed her. Every word." He turned to the gallery, toward the judge, the jury, the journalists. "She never said, 'Go hurt Lindsay.' But she didn't have to. She just made me want to." The phrase echoed in the courtroom like a funeral bell. "She made me want to." Suddenly, the debate wasn't whether Evelyn committed a crime. It was whether her control bypassed Daniel's will. A psychological expert testified. Evelyn Moore used a method akin to coercive persuasion, known in cult dynamics. Over time, she replaced the patient's identity with one she constructed. Her method wasn't therapy. It was indoctrination. That's when the final witness was called. Rebecca Shea. Another ex-patient. A woman who disappeared 3 years ago and had recently been found living off-grid in Oregon. She took the stand and revealed Evelyn had once told her, "Sometimes to start over we must burn what's behind us." Shortly after, Rebecca had tried to set fire to her estranged father's house. She was arrested, but charges were dropped due to mental health instability. She never mentioned Evelyn. She was too ashamed, too afraid, until now. "I thought she was helping me," Rebecca whispered in court. "But all she did was amplify every dark thought in my head." The jury deliberated for 4 days. And when the verdict came, it was historic. Evelyn Moore was found guilty of second-degree manslaughter and multiple counts of professional misconduct. The judge, in a rare statement, said, "Your manipulation blurred the line between therapy and tyranny. You used your license to puppeteer the vulnerable, and someone nearly died because of it." She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Outside the courtroom, Daniel wept. Not from relief but from grief. She'll always be in my head, he said. But maybe now she doesn't get to be in anyone else's. The courtroom was silent. But her words still echoed in the heads of those she touched. And long after the handcuffs, Evelyn Moore's voice continued to manipulate lives she could no longer reach. Until one final secret shattered everything. The trial was over. The headlines had faded. But for the people who once sat across from Evelyn Moore, the nightmare had just begun to unravel. Daniel Grayson was released from the psychiatric facility under supervised care and mandatory therapy. But recovery, he said, was like peeling glass shards from your own brain. Even in his dreams, Evelyn's voice persisted. You are not broken. You're evolved. Pain has purpose. Let it guide you. You didn't commit a crime. You fulfilled a destiny. His new therapist refused to even refer to Evelyn by name, instead calling her the intruder. Because that's what she had been. A trespasser in the most sacred space of all, the human mind. Following her conviction, a team of investigators re-examined Evelyn's full case history. Over 70 former patients were contacted. 19 of them reported eerily similar experiences. Sudden estrangement from family. Encouragement to act on suppressed rage. A steady replacement of their worldview with hers. One young woman, Sarah Lynn, recalled being told, "If they don't believe you, prove them wrong with silence." Silence always gets noticed. Months later, she attempted suicide after walking out of a family reunion in tears. Her note? 3 words. She was right. It wasn't until Evelyn's office was legally seized and cleared that authorities discovered her personal vault, locked in a filing cabinet hidden behind a false panel. Inside were dozens of unauthorized recordings, tapes of sessions with no patient signatures, no legal waivers, just her voice, coaching, breaking, and remolding. One particularly disturbing tape featured a teenage boy, just 16 years old, sobbing over bullying. Evelyn's voice. So why are you letting them breathe? They don't deserve air you're fighting to survive in. That boy vanished the following summer. His case was ruled a runaway. Now the file was reopened. Psychologists across the country debated what Evelyn's case meant for the ethics of therapy. This wasn't just malpractice, said Dr. Helen Marquez, an expert on coercive therapy. This was the weaponization of empathy. Evelyn used her authority to rewrite people's moral code. She didn't just cross a line, she erased it. The town council removed her portrait from the local health board wall. Her certifications were retroactively voided. But the town of Wethersfield, Connecticut, once proud of their star therapist, couldn't erase the stain. Parents began pulling their kids from mental health programs. Clinics faced protests. Trust in therapy shattered, all because of one woman. Rebecca Shea, who had disappeared for years before resurfacing to testify, left one final letter behind before relocating again. In it she wrote, "People think healing is about forgiveness. It's not. It's about extraction. Removing her voice from the center of my thoughts took more strength than leaving her did. Evelyn didn't just damage my mind, she rewired it. But every day I choose a different thought, a kinder voice, that's how I know I'm still winning." 6 months after Evelyn's conviction, Daniel visited the grave of Lindsay, his ex-wife and the woman he nearly killed. He placed a single lily at the base of her headstone and whispered, "I'm sorry you had to carry what I couldn't." Then he pulled out a tape recorder. One of Evelyn's. He smashed it with a rock, shattered its casing, and left the pieces scattered among the dead leaves. Even from behind bars, Evelyn remained unreadable. She refused to speak at her sentencing. She declined interviews. No public apology. No confession. No remorse. But 6 weeks into her sentence, guards found something peculiar. A note hidden in the binding of her prison-issued Bible. Every great conductor is misunderstood in her time. Let history hum the melody I composed. It was signed not Evelyn, but simply E.M. Her initials, the ones found on every original patient folder. Like a signature on a painting she still believed was her masterpiece. While new legislation was introduced in Connecticut and Massachusetts to better regulate therapist-client boundaries, Evelyn's case became a case study in medical schools. She was no longer seen as a healer. She became a symbol of psychological abuse, a modern-day Svengali, and a warning of how the power to help can become the power to destroy. Daniel now volunteers at a mental health support group called the Silent Strings Project, named by survivors of Evelyn's manipulation. He says his mission is not to forgive Evelyn, but to prevent another one. "The best revenge," he said once during a speech, "is remembering who I was before her, and becoming someone stronger after." If you found this story gripping, don't miss our other true crime deep dives into psychological manipulation, unsolved disappearances, and coercive power. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and check out our playlist of chilling stories that uncover what lurks behind the mask of normalcy. Because sometimes the most dangerous criminals don't use weapons, they use trust.